Hi, I'm Romi.
And I'm Nicole.
We are two businesswomen, two colleagues, two friends who had an idea and decided to do something with it. Over the past 2 years, we've built the Daily Drip, a media platform and community for the modern South Florida businesswoman.
From Palm Beach to South Beach, we've built an audience of thousands of local business owners, CEOs, founders, executives, and more. And we did it 100% organically.
Whether it's through our blog, weekly newsletter, social media, events, or even this podcast, our mission is to offer a daily drop of inspiration as you pursue your dreams.
People ask us all the time how we did it and why we did it. Join us as we bring you along our journey and the journeys of so many other incredible local businesswomen here on Her Pursuit. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Her Pursuit. We are here continuing the conversation about networking, and we're going to take it into strategic partnerships. This is a part 2 of a broader conversation. So if you missed our last episode, you're definitely going to want to go and check that out before listening to this. I am here back again with Miss Melia from VoiceBox Podcast and Creator Studio, Maria with MMS Consulting, and my partner in crime and my sidekick, Romi Wallach. And we are here from the Daily Drip to talk about how networking has been so fundamental to growing our business. And so in the last episode, we talked about really building your networking game plan, kind of the simple best practices to kind of start building your network and your strategic alliances. And so today I want to talk about, how do you know when someone's a strategic alliance, when there's opportunity there? What is a strategic alliance? And what does it look like? How do you know it when you see it? So I'm going to kick it off to the group. Melia, looking at you, girl. Looking at you.
I mean, it's appropriate because we're literally sitting in the middle of a strategic alliance. And so I'd say first it's, showing up in the place, and this goes back to the last episode, where you're making meaningful connections and building relationships. And that's certainly what I did with the Daily Drip, and getting involved and being vulnerable enough to say where I was sort of in my growth and as looking for opportunities to give, but, also being open to receive, because sometimes we're not great at receiving. And so it was in conversation with you, Nicole, that I think it was my initial kickoff conversation. We're talking about my business, talking about where I was, what the opportunities were, and you were just doing what you do so well, which is, like we said, blowing my mind about the possibilities. And I think from there, you saw an opportunity to have VoiceBox come on as a community partner to the Daily Drip. And this is what I love about it. Of course, I had a need, and the Daily Drip had a need in terms of having a place to shoot the podcast. But you were so concerned with how the Daily Drip could be a benefit to my growth goals. This is an in-kind partnership. Understanding that I was new to business, and so my resources weren't endless. That in-kind was the way I needed to go, and being open to that. But then saying and helping me see these are all of the ways that this partnership can help you. You can do this, and you can do that, and you can do this. Things that I hadn't thought about, and I was just like you're eating from the plate of Nicole. Like, oh wow. And that has started to happen. So it's being open, being vulnerable to say, these are some opportunities. I'm struggling in these areas. Being willing to listen, seize the opportunity, and then taking the time to, because everything hasn't happened overnight, but slowly I can see the build, I can see the churn, I can see the growth, and it's just beautiful.
I think for these collaborations, and Nicole definitely is the pro at this, but when we look at what our collaborative opportunities could look like and what they're going to be like, we really sit and spend a lot of time on what can we offer them that this would make sense for all of us. Like, how can we help them by bringing our platform, or by bringing this event, or by bringing, and I think that it's really important when you're looking at it. And I think it also makes for you kind of sidestep any kind of sales type conversation, because it's really look at all the wins for everyone all around, right? We're able to support each other in growth, and everybody is going to get something really meaningful and valuable. And I think that is the key to the right kinds of collaborations and aligning yourself with the right people.
And I think I'm glad you brought up our strategic partnership, because that is exactly what VoiceBox and the Daily Drip have going on here. And I think you're right. It started with two needs. We needed a studio to record this podcast. You had the studio. You needed exposure to content creators. We're the Daily Drip. We're building them out here, okay? So it was that part was fairly obvious. But I think and I know of many strategic partnerships that started out with needs and wants and not much else that fell apart very quickly. And I think, to your point, it was through that collaborative conversation and coming from a place of, what is it you really need most? What is it you're focused on? And can I commit to a conscious effort of delivering that? Can I make sure I bring the value? So going back to knowing what value you have to offer and all the value you have to offer, it can be very deep if you really dig into it and think about all the ways that you can offer value. At face glance, it might look like, wow, the Daily Drip is developing thought leaders. They are content creators. They may come and use my studio. But we took it a step beyond that to say the Daily Drip works with so many stakeholders in the community, so many organizations. What could happen if I can introduce you to our other community partners, and what kind of collaborations could come out of that? And so we really tried to build the strategy of our strategic partnership. It wasn't hinging on transactions. It was a strategic plan that we built together based on our individual goals and objectives and based on our mutual benefit. And I think that that's the only way any strategic partnership that you may think is out there, you may see an opportunity in someone or some organization, that's the only way to approach it to ensure that it sustains.
But you take it, and I think that's really important that you pointed out. It's taking it one step further. It's not just whatever you see initially. I mean, that's almost simple for most people. Like, right. Oh, I need this, you need that, great, let's make it work. But I pride ourselves in the fact that we really do invest time and energy with anyone we collaborate with so that they get as much out of it as we can offer. Like, we really genuinely want to be able to provide maximum value.
And I think the ability to provide value requires an element of assessment of that potential strategic partner, as far as timing and stage in their strategy. So I can think of two cases, and I'm going to use you since we're still talking about yours. But what was very unique and supportive of this partnership was that you were in your early stages of business, and so were we. We may have been a year or two, maybe just slightly ahead of you, but not that much more. So we were both in growth mode. We were both fixated on establishing our brands, right? And that process could take a couple years, right? So even though you've got people who know who you are and we've got people who know who we are, we're still very much in the establishment stage, right? But there have been times where we've done strategic partnerships with well-established organizations. I mean, they're household names, household logos, but they were in a period of transition. And not necessarily rebranding, but in a period of needing to establish values to the community, needing to showcase that they stand for certain things. And so it was that synergy in not necessarily I have a need, you have this solution. It was more of a sense of I need to showcase or demonstrate that this is a priority for us. And by collaborating or strategically aligning with you, I can demonstrate that to the masses. I can do that on a larger scale. I think like the timing of who you're working with and looking at sort of what each individual's needs are and how you can collaboratively build the plan, I think that is everything.
Because when the timing is super far off, like even when I started, my career in financial services and I was looking to obviously build good relationships and strategic partners. So I wanted to meet estate planning attorneys or, different types of attorneys. For me, meeting with someone that had a 30-year practice was not going to move the needle for me. They weren't hungry. They weren't out there looking to grow and do all these things. So they weren't going to be reciprocating or working with me in the same way that somebody that was maybe a couple years in that was still fired up and had the energy and was looking to
for
grow
additional
and scale.
value to offer.
So I think that's really it's really critical, the timing of that.
And I think that's an important caveat to this is so when you're networking and you're assessing opportunities, are they there? How big? What could this look like? It's an important thing to think beyond needs and fulfillment and think, are we aligned? Are we both growth minded? Are we both in a mindset of transition? Growth is a transition mindset, right? You're looking to grow beyond where you are. Even a brand that's pivoting or rebranding or expanding in some way, they're in that growth mode, right? So the mindsets are the same. So typically the conversations and the collaborations are going to be really compelling and exciting as you build what this strategic partnership or collaboration will look like together. Keyword being together, not just pitching someone what you think the strategic partnership should be, but actually sitting down and being the architects, the co-architects of what this is going to look like. At the Daily Drip with our community partners, no two look alike. The structure, the arrangement, what we're giving, what they're giving, they are all customized based on what each individual's goals are. And I think that's, an important approach.
I think it's just as important to know when you're approached with these opportunities, which ones don't make sense. I think that as we've continued, thank God, like you've said, how lucky and blessed we are to continue to grow, people start to come with what they envision, as being able to be a collaborative opportunity, but they're coming from it what starts to happen is you see people coming from it from a place of like, how do I use this to expand me instead of I see the synergy and how we can work together. So being able to also recognize what's not the right opportunity, I think, is as important, because when you align with the wrong partner, it's not good. It really takes you sort of off course, and it matters because the people you align yourself with are representation of you and your values and what you believe. So if these people are doing or behaving in a way that doesn't synergistically align with you, it's not a good place to be.
And sometimes a strategic partnership doesn't need to necessarily be an exchange of service value. It could be a referral strategic partner. Like, hey, my service picks up where yours leaves off. Let's collaborate on how we can support each other and provide more comprehensive service to the clients or to the customers. How can we partner to make it more affordable? How can we partner to make it more seamless? How do we collaborate to bring a better experience overall? And then, we both elevate our brands as a result of that. And I think, to Romi's point, somebody that's been in the game for a long time, they may have those partners already lined up, and they may have had them lined up for years, and there's no transition happening for them. They're not in growth mode. They're not expanding. They're not rebranding. So they're comfortable. They're content. But, a startup or someone who is in growth mode, looking to open another office, looking to do more, offer other services, they are growth minded and they're going to want to have these conversations. But I think what you said is actually spot on, is there's a difference between having a strategic conversation that's collaborative versus being pitched, right? And so it's a form of sales, right? If someone thinks that they can benefit or use what you have built to better them, and there's really not much in it for you. Like we've had a lot of pitches that were kind of like showcased in a way that made it sound like it was really good for us, but it wasn't. And the only reason they didn't realize that is because they didn't take the time to learn what our goals and objectives were that year or that quarter. They assumed they knew what our eyes were on, and they were way off the mark. And so they just pretty much presented us with something to say yes or no to. And so that, I think, is the absolute wrong way to go about this. I think in today's day and age, in this marketplace that we live in, a collaborative approach is the key to not just building your network, but your business. And I think it's probably the most cost effective too.
And I think it requires such a clear and hard commitment to who and what you're about to be able to pass on things, even though, listen, we're all business owners. We're all trying to get our businesses, whether it's visibility, whatever. So it's not easy to turn away from things because, you know, like you don't want to say no to things, but at the same time, knowing what to say no to because it's actually going to not do you justice, I think is as important as being able to see the right opportunities.
I think yeah, that's a good point. And so it brings me to the next sort of iteration of this conversation is that I think and I talk about this a lot, and at the Daily Drip we talk about it a lot about how we're in this hybrid marketplace now. We have this digital world, we have the in-person world, and so now collaborations, business development strategies, networking, everything is hybrid, right? Like we have what it looks like online and then we have what it looks like in person. And I think it's really kind of expanded the notion of a strategic partner, what that could look like. And I actually wanted to turn it over to you, Maria, because you have launched your podcast. You've been really strategic in how you've leveraged it for networking and for your business. So talk to us a little bit about how a podcast has actually helped you build your strategic partnerships.
3 things that I look for when I am thinking about just the podcast in general or that strategy is the alignment. Is that someone that I would want to have a conversation with offline as well? Most of them are because they're friends of mine. They're people who I need all 3 of you on the podcast. You're going to be on the podcast soon. The second is exposure. I do think about what their level of commitment will be on the other side of it because exposure is its own currency as well. And so if they're willing to become a collaborator with me on that particular post or push it in their newsletter, if they allow me access to their email list, meaning I can kind of guest contribute, and then now it opens me up to an opportunity where I've just added another 500 to 700 people on my email list because there's such power in that, and then bring them on board. And then the last one I think is just I think about that just investment, and not from a financial standpoint, but just that investment in time. Like, what is that ROI for me? Like in having the podcast. For me, it is getting the message out there in a way that allows me to do it consistently, allows me to bring neat people to reinforce that messaging. And then it's kind of pivoted to now I'm working on a partnership with a company that designs digital vision boards because the podcast is about creating the vision. And we haven't dipped too much into that aspect of it until here recently, and I've dedicated an entire month to the process. And so now as I start to shift in even my own focus of how I want the podcast shipped to be turned, those are partnerships that now is going to help me leverage how I pay for the podcast. Right. So there's things now that are coming up, whereas at first it was just a full-out investment. It was me investing in a podcast producer, someone who could kind of do the things that suck the joy out of my life.
Yes.
Like take all the creative juices and like they're gone. So it made me not even want to start a podcast for that reason. But then strategically, the plan has been one to be consistent. Most podcasts only make it to 10 episodes. So
wow, I didn't know
yeah,
that.
A majority of podcasts don't survive after 10 episodes because it is an arduous task of getting guests together, of keeping that cadence and that consistency. So much of what I will pitch to people sometimes too is I'm in this for the long game. Like this is, I'm 27, 28 episodes in. I'm going to be 280 episodes in. I'm still going to be doing this because this was a piece of the business of my strategic business. It's a way whenever anyone hears me speak and they say, wow, where can I find you? Go to my podcast. It's the first place. And that's a freebie. That's something that I've not asked them to spend any money. I've literally said, look me up on YouTube or anywhere where you podcast, you can find me.
You know what I think is also interesting is it's an out for you in networking to extend the relationship or take the relationship further without a sale. Mm-hmm. It's one thing to say, let's sit down and talk about what you do, what I do. Could we work together? It's another thing to say, hey, you sound really interesting. I really love what you do. I'd love to have you on my podcast. Like, who's going to say no to that, right?
And then, we were talking about this last time, then that goes back up to that exposure, because then they're sharing it on LinkedIn. They're sharing it on their Instagram pages. They're copying it over, because I'm sending them all the assets. They're copying it over to their YouTube pages. So now my audience is being doubled, sometimes even tripled. I mean, I've had guests on that have had 250,000 followers. I had a guest on that had 1.9 million followers. Like, though that is exposure for me, and I look at that from, and I mean, we're analytics, of course, I follow those too. So I see those episodes like spiking because they've accepted the collaboration. Things have really helped, not necessarily benefit me. It's not like all these people signed up for my coaching or anything, but it's just that exposure, and that one seed that gets planted, and we talked about that in the last episode, now creates a follower who tells another person, you need to listen to this podcast. Tells another person. It's that ripple effect that you start creating.
So you just mentioned it. So it helps your networking by expanding your brand to new audience members or new people. Outside of the endorsement or the advertising partnership that you scored through your podcasting, has any of your episodes or guests led to consulting clients? Have you had that experience yet?
Not directly, but I would say indirectly. So I actually just met with a girl yesterday who had said that by listening to my podcast, it had fundamentally changed her life. Wow. And it was one of those moments where you're like, oh my goodness, I just do this because
I know. Is there anyone listening out there? Are we just doing this? Right. I wonder if we're ever going to have that feedback.
I listen to myself.
But it was one of those moments where it just validated, wow, okay. Well, I remember my podcast producer saying, would you still want to do this if no one listened? And I said, yes, because it's helping me accomplish other strategic goals. It's helping me hone a message. It's helping me get really clear on what it is that I want. Yeah. It's helping me formulate how I would pitch to people. Not even pitch, but how I would set up the framework for my workshops, et cetera. It might even give me ideas to build out more workshops. So yes, I would still do it even if no one listened. But then to meet this woman who is in a place and a position in her life where she's needing really clear direction, but doesn't necessarily have the means to be able to say, I want to sign up for your coaching and I want to pay you, to coach me one-on-one, but took the time to say, but I'm listening. I'm listening every week. And your guests are helping change my perspective. Your guests are helping me change, the way I think about myself and my life and all of these things. And then now when you do your solo episodes, I'm all in.
I love that.
Yeah.
What an interesting way to network through podcasting.
And I was going to say, I think also, as a podcast, you're thinking about your audience, right? How do I, you're bringing on people that you also know are further going to support your audience in a way that you're supporting them, right? So whoever, that's part of the strategy too. It's not even just their exposure, but what they speak about, what they have to offer, it is more value for your audience. It's something that you want to be thinking about, right? How can I continue to better serve my audience? Well, by having particular people on my podcast that support my mission and support what I'm sharing with my audience. And I think that's important.
It goes back to our last episode where we talked about networking by being in service of others. Mm-hmm. When you are building a platform, whether it's a blog, whether it's a podcast, you really are talking about how do I serve my audience and not by way of selling, right? By serving.
Podcasts are so powerful. I think the statistic, I think you guys have even shared it. I don't know at least, but I know I've heard this, but there's only going to be over, I think right now there's 424, what is it? million or maybe even billion. I'm going to butcher this, but it's going to go up by 20%. It's going to be over 500 billion listeners, active listeners or whatever. That's probably not even correct. I don't even know.
Well, it's great. Podcasting is skyrocketing because people can do it while multitasking, right? They can do it while they're exercising, do it while they're working.
And now they can watch it or they can listen to it. There's different ways to consume it even.
And I think it's more, it might be a more elegant experience for people to listen versus read, right?
People are only retaining about, less than 10% of what they read over, 90% of what they watch or hear. And so I think just in terms of a digital media, from a digital media perspective, it's effective.
Yes.
You also hear the voice of the person. Like there's so much that you get from like connecting. And it's funny because I actually don't watch podcasts. I think we had this conversation. I only listen to them. But even in that, like there's just something where you feel like you're having a conversation with them that is sometimes just comes across different than reading.
Now, we were saying that like you're listening in on a really, really good conversation. Yeah.
Great way to talk about and showcase how networking has evolved in the 21st century. And now, Melia, you have a unique strategy where you do office hours elsewhere.
I do a few things. So what I try to marry the things that don't drain me and that actually refill my cup, and that is giving to people one-on-one in sort of a coaching office hours environment. And so not only do I host events here that we have some of that, you have, different things here where people are coming into the studio and I'm able to meet folks. And so I'm not going out to a networking event, but I'm, giving tours and I'm, or doing panel discussions here in the studio. That's a new form of networking, right? Where you're offering just an experience, being the host. But then the office hours, it's really special because I do that in two ways. So I partner with a studio called PS Social in Miami, which is also a creative studio. And they bring me in and I get to meet clients. I do free consultations and I'm just talking to them about their businesses and I'm talking to them about their needs and I'm offering advice real time. And then my ask from them is that, they follow me on social media. They give me a review. They recommend someone. They come back the next week, right? And so it's driving traffic to that studio. But as well as it's getting me in front of folks, the creators that it's difficult for me sometimes to meet face to face when I'm in the office sort of doing the work. And then, we're doing that over live streaming. And so I don't want to forsake the power of networking over live stream. And we do a lot of that because you touch so many more people, right, that are coming into a live stream, and that, again, you would be hard pressed to meet that amount of people, that volume of people in person. But through a live stream, talking about a topic, you can really, really share information and start to build a community, really expand your network. And I've actually gotten a lot of good business returns in making myself available through the office hours, through live streaming, and through hosting events.
That is interesting. And that all came out of that one strategic collaboration with another content creator studio that needed you to do in-house office hours.
Well, both. So the hosting is part of what came out of our collaboration through the Daily Drip. That was one of the things you told me, like, listen, you've got to host events. You need to be having something.
Got to get bodies in the building.
Bodies in the building. Every month you should be having something. And so we've been trying to stay true to that and host different things here. And so that's been working really well. But then that strategic partnership and collaboration with PS Social Miami has been great in that, those office hours have been just so powerful in, getting me in front of creators that I wouldn't necessarily have, easy access to on my own. And then we're doing that live stream. And so that's building out my social media.
No, it's interesting because I think it's funny. You mentioned when we had our strategy call and we were building our strategic partnership, and that was one thing I told you to do. And the reason why I told you and had such conviction with this was because that was how we built the Daily Drip, was through hosting. It's very powerful when you're the host of the event, of the podcast, of the experience, whatever it is. When you're the host, it gives you the ability to lend your platform to people that you think are aligned with your message and can benefit from it. But when we were first getting started, and Romi would go out there networking, and we were looking for thought leaders. We were looking for more Melias, more Marias, right? Wow, Melias and Marias. I like that. More Melias, more Marias. No, but we were looking for that. But then it became apparent to us as we realized, hey, we're the Daily Drip for South Florida businesswomen. We need to be in front of more businesswomen. We need to be at women's networking groups, associations, events. And then right away, we started realizing this gaping hole that they had, which was that they had a really hard time with engagement from their members. They were hosting events and no one was showing up. Or they had a lot of people post-COVID that weren't renewing the membership because they already knew a lot of their fellow members. They were connected on social. They could maintain the relationships independently. So they weren't really seeing the value. So when we had our hosting strategy, our value prop to the association was, we can bring back your value. We can get people back out from their homes and in person connecting, but not with the priority of networking, but the priority of learning. Yes. We have so much to teach and offer modern professionals on how they can expand their digital footprint, network more effectively in a hybrid marketplace. Let us teach your members. Let us provide a great platform for your leaders of your organization. So then we decided to talk with their board members and some of their key stakeholders in their membership and say, what if we gave you speaking opportunity? And then that ended up evolving into panel events, and it was showcasing their members in panels, and we were orchestrating the whole thing. We were doing everything from venue logistics, event logistics, run a show, prepping, panel prepping the workshops or master classes, whatever it was we were entertaining that community with. We were the hosts. And I can tell you that when you are the host, all that blood, sweat, and tears, all that effort ends up coming back tenfold, because people want to know, who's that host? Who's the one behind all of this, and how do I work with them or get with them?
I think we've talked a little bit about this, but especially when you're in the beginning stage and you got to make this all budget friendly, it was also us finding a vendor that had a need for a particular type or demographic to come through their doors. We're like, well, wait a second. We have those people. Let's work together. Like, you have great space. We have the people. So be creative in terms of where you're hosting these things. You know, like, we've been really lucky. I'm part of a group where Locality Bank has been kind enough to host us because it's all business owners. Well, who do they serve? They serve business holders. So it's great for everybody. We get the benefit of this beautiful space. They get an opportunity to share with us what they do and how they service the community. It's a win for everyone. And it definitely helps for people who are trying to figure out, like, you know, I want to host events, but it's cost prohibitive, or how do I manage it? There's a lot of good resources that you can start to think about in terms of your network, where people are interested in having a particular demographic of people come through their doors. So offer and have that conversation with them, because it's a win across the board.
That could be a strategic partnership.
Exactly.
That's being open to sort of the tentacles of networking, right? Like, I think you said it earlier, it can start as one thing and really grow and morph into other things, and just being open to allowing that to happen. For example, through hosting events here, I met Rochelle, who is a thought leader with the Daily Drip, and we said, listen, we have a common goal to, you know, start a community of women, you know, for women of color, and so we've been working on building this, right? But that is it. That came directly from being open to the possibility that, you know, there's more collaborative opportunities, you know, as you meet people and as you go and as you network, and looking at what you can give and what you can receive. And, you know, so I just wanted to say that it doesn't always end how it started, right? Just
never ends how it started.
That is really it. It does not end how it started. And I think that is the name of the game when it comes to networking. You're really trying to network creatively. Don't think that networking, you know, what did you say? It ain't your bubby's networking anymore. It's 2024, and networking does not look like going from event to event to event and the Chamber of Commerce, although the chambers are great. But it's more than that now. There's more creativity available to you now. You can host things virtually or in person. You can collaborate with others on hosting things. So you share the burden, whether that's a time burden or whether that's a financial burden. And so when you're out networking and making relationships, you're looking for all kinds of people that can help share the burden, people that can collaborate, people that can buy from you, people that can refer you. And so it's important for you to just know as you're going out there that you're looking for all of these things, and having a really embrace creative strategy when it comes to networking today. We have so many more opportunities than existed 20, 30, 40 years ago when it came to relationship building and networking. So I think that that's kind of the coolest part of the whole thing. You too can build a business in 2 years, like Romi and Nicole did, just by being creative and resourceful and collaborative. And so, yeah, and giving. And so I thank you guys for joining us on this episode, all about strategy and networking strategy. And I hope that anyone listening got some good tidbits and a little bit more direction and clarity around their creative plan. And we will see you back here on the next episode of Her Pursuit.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Her Pursuit. You can catch a new episode every other Wednesday. Please don't forget to subscribe or follow so that you don't miss out on any of the good stuff.
We love bringing you free content and value to help inspire and motivate you. So if you enjoyed this episode, throw us a thumbs up, leave us a rating, a review, and send this to a friend who you think would enjoy it. Your support is so important to us, and we wouldn't be able to do any of this without you. So thanks for listening. Talk to you in 2 weeks.